My name is Betty Mueller, and welcome to another program about your Jefferson County heritage. With me is Frank Magre of Herculaneum. Frank will tell us an interesting story about early Jefferson County history and three famous names throughout colonial America. These names are William Clark of the Lewis and Clark Expedition, John and Benjamin O'Fallon of St. Louis, and the famous American Indian painter George Catlin. Frank, tell us what these men and Jefferson County have in common.
Well, to begin with, their trails met and crossed here in Jefferson County. It was here, which was a part of the Louisiana Purchase. I might explain a little bit about the Louisiana Purchase. It was a part of the French possessions in the United States at one time. The French were defeated at Quebec, and they had to give up all of their land east of the Mississippi River and all of Canada to England by a treaty that was signed in 1763. To prevent the English from gobbling up all of the land in the Mississippi Valley, Spain was ceded the portion that we call the Louisiana Purchase because their early explorers had explored this territory, and by exploration of De Soto and Coronado and others, they had a good claim to this land west of the Mississippi River. The Spanish held it until 1800. In 1800, it was ceded back to France. France at that time was strapped for money because of the Napoleonic wars and other indebtedness that they were in. And they sold this then to Thomas Jefferson. And we took possession of it. That is the bottom part in 1803, and the upper part, which we call the Missouri territories, in 1804. And this part had been administrated by the French that were left over from the previous occupation. And it was during this time that a lot of the Spanish land grants and things were issued by a fellow by the name of Dallasu and other French people working for Spain. Yes. I guess this is the next picture here. The land that we're talking about was a part owned by the Indians. And for the archaeologists today divide them into several categories. The one up around the Great Lakes there, as you see, that division is called the woodland people, Iroquois and Algonquin people. The part beneath it are the southern states, we generally call the South, was a different kind of a group of Indians that had an economy built on agriculture. They were raising corn, pumpkins, beans, and they had big temple mounds where they also had plazas out in front of these mounds. They were stockade villages, and had many ceremonies that were something like those at that time down in Mexico.
Frank, were they just like a cousin of the Aztecs and those people in Mexico?
The culture came up here, but not as persons, not as people coming up here. The culture came from one person talking to the other. It's like conversation. The culture was described and went from one tribe to the other, but not person to person.
They took the customs of these other cultures.
These other cultures. That's how it came into this part of the country. We'll talk a little bit about the western part, the Great Plains, as we call it, and most of our histories and our shows, picture shows, everything was generally, we think of America as the Great Plains because so many things happened in this place. But at that time, the Indians were living off of the buffalo. They were following the buffalo herds from one place to the other, from one feeding ground to the other, and there were literally several million buffaloes in this area. The people down in the Southwest were a different culture altogether. And different environment and a different way of life. They lived in permanent homes made of adobe or made of rocks, and they were scrounging out a bare living because of the ecology of that part of the country.
Did the Indians move back and forth through what we call Jefferson County today on hunts, or how did that happen?
They had trails, and they traded widely. I know that when DeSoto was exploring the South, he ran across traders that were trading items from one part of the country to the other. And when you dig into, we'll say, an Indian grave here in Jefferson County, you will find conch shell and mica and different things that were traded in from the Gulf of Mexico down here, or from the East Coast, or obsidian from up in the Rocky Mountains.
Well, they used the Mississippi.
So they did have trails that they went over from one place to the other.
And they used the Mississippi for transportation up and down?
That's right. It was the rivers were their main mode of transportation. I guess that's about it here. Okay. We'll get to Jefferson County, which was carved out of this this Louisiana territory, and we see here, which I've marked off, the Spanish land grants. In the 37 years that the Spanish were here, it was the period when most of the Americans were coming across the Mississippi River to inhabit this land. Here was free land, and they, as you see, they went up the different rivers and creeks over there on Big River, on the Merrimack River, on we'll say the Platten Creek, the Joachim Creek, all of these creeks. The alluvial bottom was the choice places that they wanted their farms. That's where they were going to carve out their place to live the rest of their lives. Now, there were a lot of land grants, and they were given out by the Spanish on the basis of how many children they had in the family and how many slaves they brought with them. Most of these people came from the slave-holding countries when they came across the Mississippi River. Now, there were all kinds of grants too. This was actually a can of worms to sort out, and it was quite a big thing in American history at that time. It was one of our problems to be solved, was how to sort out all of these land grants, because they had not been surveyed. They were just a note on paper. You own so many acres of land, and they also were other people. There were other groups that were giving out land. Not only the Spanish there, right after the Americans took over, they started issuing a same type of a grant for men that had served in the services, like the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and then when they had the earthquake down in southeast Missouri, down in New Madrid in 1811 and 12, they repatriated those people and gave them grants, and some of them were in Jefferson County. Then there were large grants that some of these men went to down to New Orleans that got grants. There's Comanche up there, that large one that you see at the mouth of the Merrimack River. Comanche was given this tract of land if he would maintain a ferry across the Merrimack River, because this was necessary for the Spanish to keep their country together. St. Louis was one of their cities. St. Genevieve was another one. New Madrid was another. And they had a trail running up through here that they called the El Camino Real. And getting across the Merrimack River was always a problem. So they gave this man a large tract of land there. And then there were others too.
Well, Frank, if you owned a tract of land, did you have to live on it, or could you be an absentee land owner?
A lot of those tracts of land that the Americans gave out were absentee owners. They were entrepreneurs that wanted something for nothing, and they put in, if they had political clout or something, they put in for a tract of land that was open on a map, probably, that they procured somewhere. And this was one of the problems. The thing was very heated at times in our political history, especially state history, and Governor Dunklin decided to make an issue out of this, and on his platform, or one of the planks of his platform, he decided that he would settle this if he was elected. And he was elected, and he did go to Washington, D.C., and they ironed out all of those. And this is the results of his putting them together.
Well, all this took place before Jefferson County was a county, is that right?
Some of that, I suppose all of them took place before Jefferson County was a county. I don't remember that any of them that
took place
after that. They were all put in. At least they were started before Jefferson County. This was, of course, all at that time. This was all St. Louis, or St. Louis County.
I've got a map here, Frank, that shows how Jefferson County was carved out of St. Louis County at the time, and I guess that's pretty accurate. But you see that when the old records and things that we looked in about old Spanish land grants, they didn't refer to Jefferson County at all. All this land was referred to as St. Louis County, and I guess that's the reason why, is because at that time there was no Jefferson County.
Yes, that's so, Betty. There was a little tract of this land at the Platten Creek south, following the Platten Creek. That area belonged to St. Genevieve, and when they carved Jefferson County, they took most of Jefferson County out of what was claimed by St. Louis County, and a little bit of St. Genevieve County, and this is what they finally came up with. This is not the shape that was originally used, but this is the final one that we recognize today. Yeah, this is Governor Clark. This is the same man that went on the Lewis and Clark expedition. Clark was he was also a general in the Army. He was a superintendent of all the Indian affairs in the new territory. He was also the head of the American Fur Company there in St. Louis. That was his attraction, actually, Betty, to St. Louis, because he had an interest in the American Fur Company, and that was where the money was.
Frank, tell me a little bit about Clark's family.
The Clark family came from Tennessee, no, from Kentucky, around Lexington, and that's where his brother was General George Rogers Clark, who freed who captured all the British forts in the Mississippi Valley and ran the British out of here.
Clark had a sister that married an O'Fallon, is that right?
Yes, the youngest daughter married the father of James, of John and Benjamin. They were only married just several years, about 4 years. He was a very interesting character, the father was. He was what you would call one of the fighting Irish that we always refer to as the Irish. And he came to America just before the American Revolution. And right away he was thrown in jail for his fight with the British. You know, the British and the Irish, they still don't get along. They fight like two tomcats in the same alley. And that was so back in those days. Well, when the Revolutionary War started, well, he was freed, and then he was quite an educated man. He was a doctor, had a doctor's degree, and he went on in the war. As first started out, he raised an army of French, made a battalion of 100 Irishmen, and he was their officer. But his services as a surgeon was outweighed his being an army officer, and he rose to be the Surgeon General, or the equivalent of our Surgeon General in the Continental Army. And but after the war, he became engulfed in all kinds of things that was counteractive to what the United States government was trying to do. He was trying to establish an independent countries down in Florida and over in the territory of Louisiana. And of course, this ran counter to what the United States government was trying to do, and he was in hot water all the time. He died.
Was this before he married into the Clark family?
Yes, but the last one, when he was negotiating with a fellow by the name of Genet, a Frenchman, to establish a state over in Louisiana. At that time, he married Frances, and it was a hectic marriage. It was not a very good marriage, and I think she had left him before he died. It was only lasted about 3 or 4 years, and they had 2 children though during this time. They did take time to have 2 children, and this was John and Benjamin, who came to Jefferson County. This is John here, as an elderly person. John was quite a person. He followed in the family footsteps in that he became an Army officer, and then he was appointed. There was a lot of nepotism in those days, and conflict of interest went on between Clark and especially the 2 boys that he had raised. He raised the Francis' boys, and that was John and Benjamin. That was the only 2 children James had. Anyhow, we get into this man here. He became a purveyor of the supplying all the forts. I suppose governor, his uncle being the governor, and
the superintendent of all the Indian
all
affairs.
of the Indian affairs, gave him a pretty good in on things that was going on. And he became very wealthy, became a very wealthy man, became the superintendent, he was superintendent of the bank there of St. Louis. He owned ferries across the river, and the hotels, the Lindell Hotel, the Great Southern Hotel, and the gas company up there. And he was.
In other words, whenever there was any money to be made, there was John O'Fallon.
He was there, and he was right on the spot and in the right place, and knew the right people.
And it didn't hurt that his uncle was high in government?
No, that was allowed in those days, or at least it was practiced.
Well, evidently it's practiced all the time.
Anyhow, that's about the way it was back in there.
Okay,
and if you go to St. Louis today, you will see here's a school called O'Fallon School. Here's a street called O'Fallon Street.
Here's a park called O'Fallon Park.
You go over to Illinois, there was O'Fallon, Illinois. You go out a little bit on 70, and there's O'Fallon, Missouri. These were all places that this man had money. And but by the same token, when with all this wealth, he was the Jesse Bush, whenever they came to him for money to start St. Louis University, Washington University, the Polytechnic schools. They needed a place for the waterworks up there, and like you said, parks, anything like that. They just came to old John, and John had the money. And you remember we went through a stack of his holdings up there, and it's amazing what they have.
He was a fabulously wealthy man.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It's amazing that he started with practically nothing.
That's right. He started with nothing. Just a boy, just like. You know, we get over to his brother here. When this man here, they set him up to run a mill. And it was probably in the Imperial, probably around an Imperial or Barnhart area, because it was on the around the Indian Retreat area that the O'Fallons owned up there, or at least they were the people that had ownership or something of the Indian Retreat. But this man then, as soon as John gave up the idea of being an Indian agent, this man took it. That was his brother. That was his younger brother. He took the agency and spent a lifetime as an Indian agent, and was and done a very, very good job as being an agent. He got along with the Indians. He loved them. They called him father, and he was a real good man for the times.
Okay, now this portrait was painted by George Catlin.
George Catlin painted this picture of him, as well as many of the other. This is reputed and was pointed out to me. I took this picture about 1920, in the 1920s, and it was what was left of the original settlement of the O'Fallons, and people that at that time said, this is where George Catlin painted his Indian pictures, and this is where he lived when he was in Jefferson County.
Frank, why do you think they call this estate, or this tract of land, I think it was about 3,000 acres?
Yeah, it was, 3,000 acres.
Why do you think they called it Indian's Retreat?
It was a land grant, one of these land grants that I pointed out in the one picture above here. At that time, the story is that they gave it to one of the O'Fallons because it was a place between the Sac and the Fox and the Delawares, who were friendly Indians, and between the Osage to our west. The Osage at that time were giving us a pretty hard time. They had killed in our county quite a few of our people. The House family massacre, the Jones, the Hildebrands. There were quite a few people killed by the Indians, and they put this tract of land between them, between the Osage and put friendly Indians on this tract.
Now,
and it ran from the river. I might describe it.
Sure, please do.
It ran from Sulphur Springs at the river, took in all of Imperial, all of the land around, we say, Kohler City, then westward over to across the I-55, where LaGoria is at, and where the big Parkton subdivision is at today. This is a description of that
I've got some pictures I wanted to show you, Frank, that talk about Indian's Retreat, and there's a painting that is in the office at LaGoria that shows some of the scenes of Indian's Retreat. And I wonder if, in your eyes, do you think that it's basically, other than the property with houses and people, do you think the land is basically the same?
Oh, there's been a lot of changes since that time. Railroads came through there, Highway 61, 67. They've been mining done along there. There's farming. The land was probably, a lot of it was cleared. There's been probably a lot of changes.
In
made.
other words, if the O'Fallons came back, well, they wouldn't recognize their own property.
I'm sure that they wouldn't, because none of the buildings are left except the Benjamin O'Fallon house is the only one that's left that I know of, Betty. This one here shows the Colonel O'Fallon's house, and down here is a little building, which is probably that one that we just showed.
Okay, now here is a photograph of the cabin.
That may be the same. That may be the same building when it was at an early time. This is not my picture. This is a clipping from a newspaper, and this is probably how it looked when he was
Okay, now here's the Cedars.
The Cedars was the Colonel James O'Fallon home, and as I remember it, back in the 1920s, 30s, it was a eating place. It had been converted to an eating place, and it was run by the Becker family. It was a real nice eating place, because it was a place you would take your mother out on Mother's Day. You'd take your best girlfriend out to make an impression. It was that kind of a place. And the Beckers, as far as I know, they moved from there and took over the Crystal City Hotel and ran a eating place and lodging there for many years. Then they bought the Hammer Estate up there. This was before the Benedictine monks came in there, and that was the last time I heard of the Beckers. This is the house that the Benjamin O'Fallon house. It's right near LaGuardia and over in the Parkton subdivision today. I can tell a little story about this place. The Mrs. Harold of the people that have the distribution, the beer distribution people over here at Imperial, she wanted me to take her and two people from California by the name of O'Fallon out to this place, because these women had not seen this place since they were children. And we went out there. It was all grown up with brush and weeds and so forth. And at that time, it was out in the boondocks, really out in the boondocks. And it was lived in by a commune of hippie, what we called hippies in those days. There was probably 20 or 30 of these derelict-looking people living in this house. There was not a stitch of furniture or curtain around the windows, nothing in that house, no running water, nothing, except these mattresses all over in every room. There was not a room that didn't have mattresses in it. And then these people, we walked all through there because these women wanted to see the room that they had stayed in when they were children and things that had happened.
They were in for a surprise.
They really were.
They got in there.
But these people didn't bother us at all. We went out the back, and they had a kind of a kitchen set up there, a shed with a stove there, and most of them cooking out of tin cans and things. It was during our Depression years, and there were a lot of these people and a lot of these places, not only here, but all around Jefferson County at that time. There were bums living in caves along the river and places.
They weren't what you call bums. They were the hippies, I guess.
I guess it was a different set, of course. But anyhow, that was what I found out there. Today, if you go up to Parkton, you'll see this place. At one time, it was during the time that at least during the time the Mariettes lived in that place, it was called the Seven Gables. I don't know what it was called back in the O'Fallon place. Of course, I wasn't around here at that time.
Do you think it's logical, Frank, that some of these Catlin paintings could be housed in this house?
Oh, I'm sure that all the reports were that they were shipped back here people on his creek up the Bezor River and up into Minnesota and down on the Arkansas, that they were put together here in Jefferson County. That is, his show was put together here. This is one of the pictures of George Catlin. He painted himself.
Frank, tell me, or tell us, how George Catlin got to know the O'Fallons and William Clark.
Well, any general is going to give his lieutenants a job. He was raising those two boys, and as they grew up, he assigned them jobs all the time to
keep them out of mischief.
Well, probably so, but he took some of John, I know, I think the other man did too, Benjamin did too. They would take these Indians on the tour that wanted to go to Washington, D.C. and see the Great Father. And they came from, the orders came from Clark, Governor Clark, but they were carried out by the O'Fallon boys. And when Catlin wanted to come to St. Louis and be where the Indians were at, this is where the Indians came for trade. This is where they came to sign treaties. They came there on these tours, coming through St. Louis and so forth. He would assign them to these two nephews of his, and they were all born about the same time. In fact, is within 5 years of each other. John was born in 1791. Benjamin was born in 1793, and George Catlin here was born in 1796, within a 5-year period. So they had a little bit in common there, in that they were the same age, 200 years ago.
But the thing that they all had in common, besides it, they all liked the Indians.
That's right. They had an interest in the Indians. They were fascinated by these people, and especially Catlin there. Yeah. George Catlin. We're going to go into his life.
Okay, we're going to Catlin now. Okay.
All right, we'll go into something on the Catlin. And I think I'll read something here I think would probably be a little bit more to the point and take up less time if we would get into something that was written about George Catlin when they wrote books about him. People that wrote books reviewed his books later in life. It says here that George Catlin's Indian gallery was an amazing accomplishment. And so was George Catlin, an amazing man. He was a painter, an author, an ethnologist, a historian, a traveler, and a showman. He was indeed a versatile character. Moreover, he was determined, courageous, and for his time, compassionately foresighted in his appreciation of the Indians and their culture. He brought knowledge, entertainment, understanding, and beauty to thousands of people. George Catlin was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and as early in life, his father wanted him to become a lawyer. His father was a lawyer at Lucerne there in Pennsylvania, and so he was more or less forced into being a lawyer. But this was not for him. He followed this for about 2 years, but that was about all he could take of it. He then moved into Philadelphia. In the meantime, he had painted some, and he thought, well, I'm going to be a painter. And he was just an ordinary painter. At this time, he didn't have any idea about painting Indians. He was just painting portraits of just people and scenes of the times. Then he got to opened up his studio, and every now and then a stray Indian would come into his life. Osceola was captured down there, and that was one of his paintings. And other Indians would be going to the east. And these fascinated him just to no end. And what turned him on with the Indians was about 15 Indians going to the Washington, D.C., came through Philadelphia, and they paraded them around town in all of their regalia and all of their ornaments and things. And he was just taken in by them. He just he went bananas, you might say, and turned his life around. From then on, he decided, and right then and there, he decided that he was going to give up all of his other life and do nothing but go out to every tribe in the nation and paint Indians. He was going to be their historian. He was going to be the one that would record all of the things about the Indians. And this had happened when these 15 Indians came through Philadelphia. And he did do a pretty good job. He got about, visited about 55 Indian tribes, and got a representation from these Indians in his paintings and in his writings. And he's known both for his paintings and his writings. And he is more or less contributed a lot towards their history.
Well, when he decided to paint the Indians, he decided to come to St. Louis and to meet William Clark.
That's right.
Because he thought Clark was the key to open up the door to all the Indians. Is that right?
That's right, Betty. He, and like I said, General Clark assigned these two boys, these two nephews of his, to take care of him. And they took Catlin all around St. Louis. He spent about 2 years, and we think at the Indian retreat there at Sulphur Springs, where the Catlins were living, probably in one of these houses that we showed previously here. And they went up to, mostly where Clark had interest in the fur trade. That was where he would meet the Indians. They were buying the Indian furs, and they went up to Minnesota. While he was here, that 2 years, he went to down into Arkansas, where they had trading posts, and up the Missouri River, not to its all the way up, but as far as Omaha anyhow. And during that 2 years, he painted something like 15 or 20 Indians, and had a show going on. And then after he'd been here 2 years, and at the age of about 34, he had a chance to go on the Yellowstone. Yellowstone was making it was the first boat to go up the Missouri River, and it was a historic event that a steamboat would go up the Missouri River, and he was one of the passengers. Of course, I guess Governor Clark had something to do with him being a passenger on something like this, and this put him out where the Indians were, undisturbed by the white people, up among the Sioux and the Blackfeet and the Adasses and Cheyennes and all of those Indians out living from up the Missouri River out to the Rocky Mountains.
Meanwhile, back at the other Indian tribes, here there is a map.
Oh, well, Betty, before we get that far, maybe we ought to talk a little bit about Catlin, his later life at this time. Catlin came back and assembled all of the things, the artifacts that he had collected. You must remember he spent about 6 or 7 years out there in the boondocks painting these Indians, and he painted ferociously, you might say. He thought that he was the only one that was going to record these Indians before they were decimated by the whites that were coming out there. And in fact, is one of the write-ups in the New York paper writing up about it said that he had the fastest brush in the West. It was an expression way before the one fastest gun in the West came out. Anyhow, he accumulated around 500 paintings and a lot of artifacts, dresses, leggings, things worn by the Indians, their the different things that they used every day, and their tomahawks and things like that, and assembled a show there. And probably where he assembled this was at up here at the Indian retreat at Sulphur Springs. Then he took this show on the road, you might say. And it was quite a thing. It was like a Wild West show that Buffalo Bill or Barnum would have produced. It was a forerunner to those kind of shows. He had a big tent or a council house, and he had live Indians in there. He brought he knew a lot of Indians, and he used live Indians in his show. And he went out east with this show, and it was widely. It was a big hit. They'd never seen anything like it, and it went over real big. And then he decided for bigger things, he took it to Europe. There he was widely received. He had audience with Queen Victoria and King Louis Philippe of France, and all the barons and the other people of Germany and all over France. In fact, as he liked it over there so well that he stayed over there 14 years, he became a European instead of an American before he came back here. But after a while, his show sort of petered out. His Indians had left him, and some of them had died, and it was sort of the end of the trail for him at one point. And he had to mortgage his Galleria. He called this the Gallery. And when he mortgaged this, he mortgaged it to a man that he knew in Philadelphia. This fellow took the mortgage on this thing, and his name was Joseph Harrison. Joseph Harrison, and this fellow, when he died, the estate closed in on him and left him penniless over in Europe. About this time, a fellow by the name of Baron von Humboldt, the great geographer, who had been following him in Europe, came to his rescue. And through his association with him, he got Catlin to go to South America and paint Indians in South America, all the way down to the tip of South America, all up the Amazon River, up the west coast, the Indians that he didn't get before because he couldn't get to them, down in the southwest, in Mexico, the California Indians, all the way up to the Aleutian Islands, and then over into Canada. He painted with the same speed and the same ferociousness that he used before. And he accumulated a lot of more, new batch of these pictures. But this time he took them to London, and they were processed over there. And then in the last years of his life, by this time he was near 70 years old, he came back to America to sell some of his pictures at Smithsonian. But by this time, Mrs. Harrison had donated all of his pictures that he had used that was left over from his gallery, had donated them free of charge to the Smithsonian. And of course they had Catlin pictures running out of their ears, you might say. They didn't have space for it. He couldn't sell very many to the Smithsonian anymore. But they did give him a place to stay because he was penniless, didn't have any money, and they let him stay the last 4 years of his life in one of their turrets of the Smithsonian, and that's where he lived out the last 4 years of his life.
Was he really appreciated in those days, Frank?
I guess it was at times when it was something new to the people. It was, but after a while it wore thin, I suppose. he wasn't as magnificent as he was when he first stepped in the room.
After he had been seen and seen and seen, then
That's right.
he lost his charm for a while.
That can be said, yes. I think that happens
The public is fickle.
I think that's what happened at his time. There may have been other factors too, depressions or something like that.
And while Catlin was
yes,
running and painting all these Indians, they were moving.
They very much so in those days. That was a big controversial thing at that time. Move all of the Indians east of the Mississippi, wherever, to the west, and put them in a big Indian reserve. And they chose the area of Oklahoma for this. And what at that time was called the Oklahoma Territory. And these are the routes that the Indians took. Most, as you see, a lot of them went through Missouri over to Oklahoma. But they went different ways just so they got over there. That was the main thing.
Didn't make any difference how they got there, is that they got there.
It was a big political thing. Jackson, when he ran for president of the United States, he promised his people that would vote for him that he would move all the Indians east of the Mississippi River to the west of the Mississippi.
They wanted their land, didn't they?
They wanted their land.
They wanted their land.
That's all they were after, as long as they could get that. This is a picture of Ross, John Ross. He was a Scotch Cherokee. John Ross was quite a person. Had a degree, educated at Harvard University, and he was an astute man, an astute student of history. He was married to a full-blood Cherokee. He was their leader. That is, he was the principal leader of the Cherokees. Now you must remember, Betty, that the Cherokees were one of the largest ethnic groups in the United States at that time in one body. There was about 30,000 of these Indians living in northern Georgia, in Tennessee, and in the Carolinas, just the tips of those last named states. And they had, he as their leader, almost made them become literate. They had their own schools, their own publications, their own blacksmith shops, mills, and they practiced good husbandry with their animals, and he went a lot for peach orchards and things like that.
They were farmers.
They were farmers. They had plantations, and many of them had slaves. They were well-to-do farmers, you might say.
And the white man really didn't like that a bit.
Oh no, the reason he kept his people together, one of the reasons, they signed a blood pact with each other. In blood, I understand they would bleed each other and sign this blood pact. That they would not sell their land to a white man. They would not in any way engage in a treaty with the white men. And this way, the white men couldn't get to them. They couldn't buy their land. They couldn't get them drunk and sign something for a treaty or anything like that. Quick claim or anything like that. And here they were sitting right among these white people, these greedy whites wanting their land.
Wanting their land.
And those nice big farms over here. Then along... This went on for 10 years after the other Indians had moved out, and it was a big political issue of that day. Then along came John...
This Major Ridge.
This is Major Ridge. Major Ridge. Major Ridge was a full-blooded Cherokee, and he was a right-hand man of Jackson. And he was a leader of a certain group of the Cherokees, a minor group. And at that time, the Congress had offered $15 million if they would transport themselves to the Indian territories. Well, this went on it was kicked around for several years, and each time Roth got a stay. But this man came along and took some of that money, or all of that money, and took his followers to Oklahoma. And they went out in class. They went out in carriages and covered wagons and all of their belongings because they had plenty of money and plenty of time. But this broke the back of John Ross's hold on the Cherokees. And about this time, the Army moved in on the Cherokees, the 23,000 that was left, and marched them bodily, forced them to go to Oklahoma.
Well, did they go through a portion of Jefferson County, or was it down in Cape Girardeau?
There may have been some of them that swung up this far, but they were just a little bit to the south of us. They went through, if you're talking about Missouri, crossed over here at the Trail of Tears Park, and went to Jackson, then up swung up to places like Berryman, Missouri, where they got on the old trail, which is now 66 and 44 going south. And that's a trail they went on into Oklahoma. Roughly follows 44 and 66.
What happened when they all met in Oklahoma?
Yeah, when they met in Oklahoma, one of the first things that the Ross people did was to go to this man here and tomahawk him to death. They killed him and his 2 lieutenants. This was revenge for him.
Because he had betrayed, they felt he had betrayed the Cherokee Nation.
Indian. That's right. That's right, Betty. This is one of their people. This is the fellow that ran their printing presses down there. He created an alphabet for these people, and the Cherokees and Sequoia. Sequoia was quite a man, must have had a high IQ or so forth, because he was one of their leaders, not as a chieftain, but in other farms. And the Sequoia trees are named after him, the big Sequoia trees named after this man here. And this is one of his paintings, one of George Catlin's paintings also. You notice he don't get detail in his like the medals that you see are something else. But if you look closely at one of his paintings, he has character, he has roundness. He was a very astute portrait painter. He could get the character of the man and all of that. Now there were a lot of people after him that followed him, painters, German painters, French painters, English painters, but they never could get the character or the facial expressions that Catlin could get. They got more detail. You look at one of theirs and you'll see every little bit of that thing there.
Well, you know, historians, art historians, and regular historians could learn a lot from the Catlin paintings, because in every painting there is something that portrays the particular Indian tribe in which he painted. Is that?
That is right. He tried to get a characteristic, something about them, their prophets or their medicine men, or something about that tribe. All righty. This is a Black Hawk. Not, it was a long time before the football teams are named after him, but this is Black Hawk. He was the leader of the Sac and the Fox Indian tribes that lived up around from Peoria over to Ottawa, Illinois. That was their home ground. And through trickery and other things, they were driven out of their land and driven west from there over into Iowa. Well, then he and some of his braves got together and they decided to go back and claim their homeland. And when they did, a General Atkins mowed them down. It was quite a tragedy. They slaughtered these people, and they captured him and threw him in the prison up here at Jefferson Barracks. And this painting was painted by Catlin at Jefferson Barracks.
And the O'Fallons, one of the O'Fallons, took George Catlin to Jefferson Barracks, where he painted it. I'm curious to know why someone who was a prisoner would allow himself to be painted.
Well, they were humans, the same as anyone else, and they a man like that liked a little bit of attention, and I suppose that the George Catlin had a way with the Indians. They liked him. And George Catlin was, this man here, Black Hawk, was probably no different than any other human being. They had human traits, liked to be painted and gone over. They took him on a trip out east. Is that what you understand? And paraded him out in the cities out there to show him that the white people was here to stay. They were many of them, and that that he could never conquer all of them. That was the reason. These are some of the pictures from the Catlin that was at the Catlin house. I mean, at the O'Fallon house. That one of Benjamin O'Fallon's daughter sold to the Chicago Museum. There was, I understand at one time, there was about 46 or 48 of these pictures that was left after the O'Fallons had long gone out of this Jefferson County. And she came here and claimed them, and she sold, I think, 36 of them to the Chicago Museum. And this is their prize up there. When you go into the Indian section, you will see all of these 36 pictures that they display up there at the Chicago Field Museum.
Frank, tell me about Osceola.
Osceola was a Seminole leader, and they captured him. They had tried to capture him for years down there, but they finally, through a ruse of some kind, they captured him and paraded him all over the eastern cities. And it was during this time that Catlin painted him. This is considered to be one of his better paintings. This man was really respected by his people, and even the whites respected this man.
Notice the detail of the war club that he holds in his hand, Frank.
Yes, this was probably some of the designs. They liked to, the Menominees were great for that kind of artwork that they did, especially on bark of trees. This was one of their forms of art. This was Snapping Turtle. He was a Choctaw Indian. The Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and the Creeks and the Seminoles were all from the general area of what we call the Deep South.
And notice he wears part of the white man's clothing and part of the Indian clothing.
Yeah, he was an educated man. They probably put this outfit on him. He probably went around looking like a white man in everyday life. And he was very sharp and gave Catlin a lot of history of the Choctaw Indians. This was Brave Chief Pawnee. Of course, the Pawnees were out on the prairies, and you see on his skin there that he was a man that killed somebody in combat. These handprints that you see on his body there indicates that he killed a person.
He was advertising his accomplishment.
Yeah, that's right, and that was an accomplishment for a person. Chouteau was a Creek, and she was considered to be a beauty, and she didn't want to be painted, but the chief prevailed upon her for Catlin to paint him because they believed her to be a great beauty.
And she was carrying her diary around her neck. They were
That's
silver
right.
discs.
All of those silver discs and things were, of course, trade items. He who kills the Osage was a Missouri Indians. Now, the Missouri Indians lived up around Sedalia, and they were really a branch of the Osage Indians. And we are still working on them up around Miami, Missouri. Their village up there, the University of Missouri is working on their village. It's a historic village where they lived. This fellow here with the bare teeth, bare claws. This is a black coat was a Cherokee, one of Ross's people. And you see, he's got white man's clothes on too. They sometimes had a time getting. This is Sam Perriman, a Creek from the south. He was a brother of the great king of the Creeks. That's about all I can say for him. This was Two Crows was a Hadassah. Now they came. This is you skipped one down.
No, that's right.
Hadassah, 30.
This is him.
Two Crows.
No,
Anyhow, some of the things of his exploits is displayed on his cloak there. Different things that he did, killing other Indians, and some of the brave things that he did while he was in his lifetime. Pigeon Egg Head. They have peculiar names in those days. An Abyssinian. Catlin transferred this man's name with which property is the light. Upon return from Washington, this man brought back glowing picture of the number of people that was back there, whites, and they ostracized him from the
They thought he was telling a tale.
They thought he was telling a big tale, yeah. This is Buffalo Bull, was a Blackfoot, and Catlin describes this man as a 55-year-old man, very good looking and dignified.
One of the things about Catlin's paintings was that he was so afraid that the people, and the Europeans and the Americans, wouldn't believe that these were authentic. And he had Indian agents, wherever he painted these pictures, authenticate that they looked just like this.
That's right. That's right. He tried to follow that perception.
This is Mountain of Rocks.
He was the largest Indian that he was a Comanche. He was the largest Indian that Catlin ran across in all of his paintings. He weighed, he figured, much over 300 pounds.
He has a beard, and most Indians don't have beards.
Yes, I suppose that was because maybe a hormone, something about his hormone complex or something that caused that. Tobacco was a Teton Sioux, an Aglala chief. He was a respected warrior among his people. Red Thing, she was also a Teton Sioux. This was the unmarried daughter of Black Rock, who esteemed by everyone for her beauty and modesty. She was considered to be very beautiful by the Indians themselves. Okay,
I got to back it up.
This is White Cloud. He was one of the Sac and Fox Indians. He was friendly to the Indians. Little Wolf was an Iowa warrior who probably displayed his war paint. Such paintings are usually prescribed by a shaman as protective device against the men in battle. This is Bow and Quiver, a Comanche. He was the head chief of the Comanches. This is Wolf on the Hill. That sounds like a game we used to play, Wolf on the Ridge, when I was a kid. This fellow, Wolf on the Ridge, was a Cheyenne. This imposing chief impressed Catlin by his height. He was over 7 foot tall. He said that many of the Cheyennes were 7 foot tall, and they averaged out over 6 foot in height. This is Weetah Raw. Shaw Raw was a Wichita chief, head of the Wichita people, and he was over 90 years old when he painted him. You can see the wrinkles in his skin and his facial expressions. He was one of the oldest men that he painted. 6 Plains was an Ojibwa, a man of many exploits. Some of them are recorded on pictographs on his shirt. There you can see these pictographs that were on the skin of the shirt. Big Elk was an Omaha, a famous warrior, who is shown with his tomahawk. This, of course, was a item that was a trade item. Black Rock was a Teton Sioux, chief of the 2 Kettle divisions. Many of the Indians were divided into different groups, and this was a man that was on head of the 2 Kettle division of
Well, the Indians had several tribes, several names that they called each other. You might have had, if you were a member of a certain tribe, you might have had 2 or 3 names. Isn't that correct?
That is so. That it comes out in different writings. That fact is brought out a whole lot. This woman who strikes many was a Blackfoot. She wears a typical. We're getting into pictures now of full-length pictures. Before
they were regular portraits.
They were portraits, and this is a picture that he made of a woman showing her typical leg wear, leggings, moccasins, and the style for the well-dressed Plains Indian woman. This was a medicine pipe with a green background, as probably the things that he is wearing there is a trade item, I'm sure. Medicine chief was a Mandan, and head of the tribe of the Mandans. The Mandans were a great fascination to Catlin because he was Welsh, and they had Welsh words in their language, and he recognized those. Also, the Mandans had beards. They had white hair, and a lot of them were blue-eyed, and he figured that. There are traditions in the Welsh history of a fellow by the name of Maddox coming to this country with a group of Welsh people and settling among the Indians, and he thinks that this is where they ended up as being the Mandan Indians. This is Wachi T and her child. Most of the children. Indian children didn't wear clothes until they were 3 or 4 years old. And we saw this down in Mexico. We made several trips into Mexico, and we saw this same thing down in Mexico. This is Keokuk. He was a Sac and Fox Indian, and called the Watchful Fox. He was an eloquent speaker, and he liked to come to St. Louis. He traded there in St. Louis a whole lot, and I think he was killed in a brawl in St. Louis, this man. This is Keokuk on a horse. He wanted him to paint his horse because that was his pride. He had purchased this horse for $300, and it was considered to be one of the prize horses of the West. And anytime anyone referred to a good horse or something, it was Keokuk's horse. You notice this is where Catlin fell down. It was when he started to draw or paint horses or animals. He'd never. He was a self-trained man, and he never knew his anatomy. A trained artist would know anatomy, and he didn't. This is where he.
The animals
came
look
up short.
stilted.
Yeah,
They look
that's
stilted.
right. They, as you see.
This is a shaman, the old bear.
Shaman. The old bear was. It shows him with his helmets, and he was. They go through a dance, and we saw this in a Cherokee village, sort of a tourist trap down in the Alleghenies, and they used these feathers to do different things.
How did you get to be a shaman? You just didn't say, I'm a shaman, did you?
Well, generally it is handed down from his father, and they sometimes it was because the man had some kind of a defect or something. He went into trances or something, and this is they made him a shaman because he was
different
than the other people.
Okay.
This is Double Walker. He was in Omaha, and it shows him with his pipe. He's smoking his pipe. And they used dried willow, the bark of sumac and dogwood, and tobacco too, in their pipe smoking. This shows him with his pipe. Midday sun was Hadassah, and shown here in a white dress of mountain sheepskin decorated with dyed porcupine quills. She is first did not want to be painted, but like the other women, they finally prevailed upon her to be painted, and it's. You can see that Catlin had a little bit of pain, a little bit of trouble there with his proportions on this lady. Batu Tapu was a Mandan and 4 bears, while the second chief of the tribe was the most popular man of the nation, of his nation, of the Mandans. All right. Great chief was Pontica, the son of Smoke. This young man, at the age of 18, took on several wives, and that way raised the status of his in the tribe.
Okay, fine.
Oh, this is how they traveled from one place to the other. They, especially the Plains Indians, they could take their teepee and all of their belongings and take and put it on this rig and follow the buffalo.
Is this called a travois?
It's called a travois. Yes, that's a travois. Yes. Mm-hmm. This.
Whoop, whoop.
This is the
bull dance.
The Teton Sioux. It was their scalp dance, and you see the Indians out in front of their.
I think we missed that
hogans.
one, Frank. I think this is the bull dance.
This is the bull dance.
Mm-hmm, we missed that one.
Yes, it is. All righty. The bull dance was a part of the Oki ceremonies, and he made a lot out of the Oki ceremonies. This shows 8 men impersonating the buffalo. They're dressed in like buffaloes, and they're doing one of the dances of the Oki ceremony. This is the dance of the chiefs of the Teton Sioux. This they did this in favor of Catlin. They liked him because of his ability to capture the likeness of their subjects. A shaman is drumming at the right, while 4 men and young women chant to the left. This is the interior view of a Mandan lodge as part of the Oki rites, Oki Pa rites. So this is a movement of the Indian tribes from one place to the other. This is a group moving a long distance from one place to the other. and it shows them on travois and walking and on horseback. This is
Bounty of the Buffalo.
Bounty of the Buffalo. This is, shows the tanning of the buffaloes and the teepees in which this particular group lived in, the Mandans. This is the rainmaking among the Mandans. He painted the Mandans because it was his favorite tribe. After 3 other men tried to bring water or bring rain, and this young man got up on his hogan and shot a arrow into a black cloud, and the rain came down in torrents, and he became a hero. And this is something that Catlin painted, was one of their traditions that was in their tribe. Pipestone quarry is where they quarried this beautiful pipestone material, and they made these ceremonial pipes. They made discs, earplugs, all kinds of ornaments out of this reddish material. It was blood red. It was easy to carve when it was freshly mined. As you see here, one of their pipes. And the material, of course, got a lot of attention, mostly through Catlin's paintings and his writings, and some of the geologists then named it Catlinite.
Frank, I've got a peace pipe here that's got a Catlin stone on the end of it. The fire bowl is made of Catlin. It was soft when they carved it, and then it got hard, or was it always hard?
They say it is very soft when it's freshly mined, and then it gets hard, and it takes on a good polish, as you see here, and it stays blood red. It don't fade out or anything like this one. This is one of this type that you can buy at one of their a little store or something around one of the Indian reservations. They make beautiful things out of that material.
This is wrapped in skins.
Wrapped in skin.
At the very bottom.
Yeah. This shows you their cemetery. Out there on those rafts that you see out in that field would be where one person dies. They lay his body on there until it decays, and then at one ceremony or one day of the year, they gather up all of these bones and what remains, and bury them. They have a sort of a communal burial. But this is how they handle their dead out there on the plains. They put them up on this rafter to keep the wild animals from getting
I see.
to them. Mm-hmm.
This is Indian Games.
Indian Games.
Next page.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Indian Games, this is a ball game, one of the lacrosse games that they played, and Indians of all ages, children, men, elderly people, all of them got into this thing, and it was a game that was played by most Indian tribes, Eastern Indians, Western Indians, Southern Indians, and it was a ferocious game. Many of them almost always ended up with a lot of them having broken bones. And
well, not only did Catlin paint with oils, he made illustrations, black and white drawings, and lithographs.
Oh yeah, that is right.
He was really prolific.
That was right. He tried to catch their games, their ceremonies, everything. You must remember this man painted 1,400 paintings, and we just have a sample of them here of what he painted.
This is Indian dance.
Indian dance. They, of course, the Indians had all kinds of dances, and they got out in a place in front of their tents or in any place that they had a plaza, and they performed these Indian dances there. This is a close-up of the Indian dances there, or Indian games this would be, and this is an example of the lacrosse
The ring where they pitched
the ring
things?
where they had to pitch this ball through this ring. The idea was to get this ball through the ring.
Do you think that was the early football of the century?
Probably it was something of
rough
that
and
nature.
tough,
Rough and tough, though. It was a rough and tough game like football, but it was a game that all Indians played, all ages. The snowshoe dance
Here.
was a dance that they performed in the wintertime in the snow. The Indians, of course, used the snowshoes to go out and hunt and scrounge around for things like things that they ate, different kinds of things off of pine trees and things like that they ate during the winter.
Okay, buffalo.
Buffalo hunt under a wolf skin. The Indians found out that by putting on a wolf skin, they could crawl up very close to the buffalo and get a very close shot at them with the bow and arrow. The Catlin says that almost all buffalo herds had a pack of wolves following the herds, and that was why the buffalo paid no attention to them, and this way they could get up and get a very close shot.
The buffalo was never noted for its high intelligence, evidently.
That's right. That's so too. This is one at a time when they would try to run a herd of buffaloes over a cliff or in some manner make them at a disadvantage, and they would run down into a ravine or something like that and cripple a lot of them, and then they could dispatch of them. And this way they could get a food supply very easily.
This is another.
The buffalo chase this is a close-up of a buffalo chase. Two Indians and a horse. This is another buffalo chase that he, like I say, he had a lot of trouble with animals, painting animals, and it shows up very much in this pictures that you see here. The dying buffalo was one of his better paintings because he painted this buffalo when it was near death, and it was in its dying throes. And this is a picture is associated with him, no matter where you see Catlin paintings. Generally bring this one out. This is when they were breaking a pony. They would ride into a herd and put a lariat around a horse that they wanted, and then they would get out and hold the horse in the manner in which this is painted here, and that way he could tame him. Then they would hobble the front feet, which you see here, and then they had a little ceremony that he would approach the struggling horse after it was exhausted, and he placed his hand over the Mustang's eyes and then breathed into its nostrils. This was a tradition that they followed. I think that's the last picture we have, Betty. Yes,
George Catlin truly admired the Indian and their cultures. It was made possible because of his acquaintance with William Clark and the O'Fallons, who lived part of their life in Jefferson County. Catlin's paintings reflect the feeling that he truly liked the Indian. He painted all these tribes, and as a result, we have today the most comprehensive record of the American West that our nation has ever seen. This was truly a remarkable accomplishment. We thank you for joining with us, and we hope you have enjoyed the program as we try to give you another look into our Jefferson County heritage.